Before we jump into this month's topic, wanted to very quickly rewind and talk briefly about where we've been. So we started with comparing versus competing. If you've missed any of these sessions, they should be available on the Colorado Youth Soccer YouTube page, I believe, or reach out to Kelly and she'll be able to get you hooked up there. But we had comparing versus competing. We had chasing happiness, also talking in that session about motivation and loneliness, that we all experience it, right? So if that's the topic, you're just like, wait, what? I missed that one, or I want to circle back with that discussion. We talked about chasing happiness there a couple months back. Last month, we talked about how voices affect choices. And now this month, let's segue to goals. I think I'm hopefully going to come at it at a little bit different angle from what you're used to. We're definitely not going to talk about goal setting and having a talk through to say, here's what kind of goals. We're not going to even reference SMART goals. If some of you have come across that acronym for creating them in the first place. So are they a beginning or an end? I think that's an interesting discussion to have, whether it be with your teammates, with your parents, with your coaches, because what are they? Are they something that you set at the beginning of the year, or is it something that you reach and now it's, okay, close up shop, got that goal? Regardless of how you look at goals, remember that no one raises their level with low standards. Let me say that again. Nobody raises their level with low standards. I think an important reminder for you as you're setting your goals that are personal to you, that make sure you're not making them too easy. Yes, we want them challengeable. We also want them attainable, right? But I think something to remember, regardless of how you look at goals, that's really the necessity of them, is to push you forward, push you in your specific development for where you're at, regardless of what age you are when you're watching and or listening to this sports psych session. 8543, that is not an old combination of any school locker I once had. That is the likelihood of you reaching your goals that you set for yourself. But here's the breakdown. You have an 85% chance of reaching one goal that you set for yourself. Know that if you put two goals out simultaneously, that drops over half to 40%. If you want to try to set three goals that you try to go after simultaneously, or maybe you're saying, you know what, I'm really feeling it, I'm making 4 or 5 goals. Understand that you have less than 3% chance of accomplishing all of those goals simultaneously. So those are scientific facts. That is not my opinion. So something to be aware of as your goal setting, to figure out what is it that makes most sense for me and where I'm at. Understand that your odds of hitting those goals decline significantly simply by adding a second. Remember this one. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. So what do I mean by that? You might say, oh, I want to go pro. Great. That alone is not going to get you to that goal, is it? It's what are you doing each and every day to make that goal a reality? So those systems I just alluded to are what you do each and every day. And those days add up into your weeks. Those weeks add up into your months, and those months add up into your years. That is your system in place to say, if you want to be the best one on your team right here, right now, what is that process to get there? Is it waking up when everybody else is sleeping and it's waking up early, putting that extra workout in? Is it staying late? You have to figure out you, right? But understand that you will not rise to the level of your goals simply because you have these big aspirations to get here one day and do that one day. That's awesome. But understand you will fall to the level of those systems that support those goals. If you don't have systems in place, if you don't have that daily routine to help you get there, those goals they're going to stay there, right? And they're not going to be attainable. So be mindful as you navigate your journey to make sure you have the system in place to support that end product. If it matters, you have to measure it. No ands, ifs, or buts about that. I think this is the scary part for a lot of people, because now all of a sudden measuring it means you're being accountable to something. Measuring might look like this. It might look like, hey, this goal that I have an 85% chance of hitting because I'm going one after one, when do I want to complete that by? You have to measure it. Do you want to complete that by the end of the month? Do you want to complete that by the end of the week? Do you want to complete that by the end of the season? No matter how you want to look at it, you have to be able to measure it if you realistically want to attain it. So performance improves when performance is measured. That is an important piece to remember as you continue your goal setting journeys and setting those those opportunities that are in front of you, make sure you're measuring them because that's where improvement will come from. So what are you willing to track or measure to bring out your excellence? I think that's a very important question for you to be able to answer for the things that matter to you. What are you willing to measure? What are you willing to hold yourself accountable for? That's a word that I think we would all agree, that you and I would agree that it's important to have. But all of a sudden it can be and sound very scary when your parents or your coach or your teammate that knows about that goal says, "Hey, how's that coming along?" And you're just like, if you haven't put in the work, that's a daunting answer, right? But if you put in the work, it's like, oh, here's where I'm at, here's what I'm doing, and here's where I'm going, right? If it matters, you have to measure it. What are 5 to 7 things that you can do this year? And depends how you want to answer that question. Is it by the end of 2024? If so, you got 47 days left. What goal might you want to just be super focused on to say, by the end of 2024, I want to get this? Looking at the new year, what are 5 to 7 things that you can do that new year? Which ones are going to move the needle for you the most? That's what I would suggest to say, that's what you should be going after. What's going to help you get to that big aspiring goal that you say, I want to be there someday? What are the 5 to 7 things that are going to make the biggest impact? Go focus on those one at a time and figure out once you knock down that first one, go get that second one. Once you get that second one, go get that third one. You with me? So think about that, because that answer will differ from person to person. So what are the 5 to 7 things that are most important and going to make the biggest impact for you and where you want to be? That's what you should be focusing on when it comes to your goal setting. Habits. These are a big piece to you attaining your goal. It is what you do. It is how you set yourself up. It's such an important piece. And understand that you want to make habits that are easy to do and make them doable. Make them so simple that you really don't have to think about these things. They seem insignificant at first, but it's that compound effect. For those of you that joined me last month with Voices Affect Choices, it was those subtle little shifts that add up. And again, your daily choices add up into that week. And now, did you have a good week or a bad week with that accumulation? Habits are no different. They seem insignificant by itself. You're like, this habit's not that big a deal. This extra 15 minutes, not that big a deal. Now you compound that day by day, week by week. Now you're getting somewhere, right? That bigger picture, all of a sudden you're just like, I got some distance between me and that next person. Or more importantly, I got some distance between me, this version of this year versus this version of me last year, right? Make sure those habits are simple to do. They're not so strenuous that you're just like, wait, what was it again? There's a lot to that. Simplify them. Habits that can work for you, and know that habits can work against you. This is such an important piece, because think about the bad habits that work against you. Maybe it's the eating. You're just like, I need to improve that habit because it's going to improve my performance on the field. Think about how that habit works against you if you fall into that category. Maybe it's I know I need to put that extra workout in, but I like my sleep. That's a bad habit, right? Know that they can work for you, but just as importantly, they can work against you. And understand that is the reality of it. They don't only work in your favor, they can also keep you from reaching those aspirations you set for yourself. Such an important piece with that. But when they work in your favor, be patient. Let consistency work in your favor, right? Just because, again, you create that goal for yourself, make sure you're not expecting to see a result after day 1 or week 1. It takes time. Be patient with those goals you set for yourself, and make sure you're consistent with those pieces, because that's where it's really going to test not just you over the longevity, but it's proving to yourself each and every day that you can show up, right? And I talked about that one last month as well, of these separation seasons. Number 1 habit you should be obsessed with, absolutely, is the habit of showing up, right? Simple habit, but simple doesn't mean easy, right? Simple doesn't mean easy. Think about this one. Why is it hard to change bad habits? I'm not looking for us to put anything in the chat, but something to be mindful of. Why is it so freaking hard sometimes to change bad habits? I would suggest that it's so hard sometimes because we just focus on an outcome. We just focus on what the end product that we want. And that doesn't really address the situation. That's great if you want to, let's use losing weight. Oh, I want to lose 20 pounds. Great. What's your system for that? Right? That's why things don't sustain themselves more times than not, because they don't have a system to support it. So understand and make sure when you're setting your goal or goals that you have those systems in place to make sure, how am I setting myself up to be successful? Outcomes, they're about what you get, but your process is about what you do. So understand that distinction. Let me say that again. Your outcomes are about what you get. Your processes are about what you do. So, very important piece to remember, knowing that habits can work for you and they can also work against you. What are we focusing our attention on? That becomes a key player for us being successful as we continue to move forward. This one's a massive one. And you and I specifically can relate to this. Identity-based habits. It's those habits that you start creating and you start identifying with. Are you with me? It's that, oh, I'm not a morning person, or I'm not a math person, or nah, I'm just not a reader. We accept these identities, and then so often we never readdress them, we never come back to them, we just accept them almost like a life thing. That's a big hurdle to overcome. To be able to get to places you've never been, you have to be willing to do things you've never done. If you want to be that best player on your team, what are you willing to sacrifice? Because if you're not there yet, you have to give something up. So what are you willing to sacrifice along that way? You can't continue to have the identity of, I like my sleep. I'm not a morning person, but I want to put in more work than everybody else to become the best player on my team, right? Or to become the better version of me than I was last year. I got to sacrifice something in order to get something. But these identity-based habits, they're massive. Let's fast forward to adult life. Think of a bad habit that an adult might have. One that comes to mind for me is smoking. It's a bad habit a lot of adults have, right? You think of this identity-based habit. If you take two people that are trying to quit smoking, right? One's offered a smoke and they say, no, I'm trying to quit. They still identify as being a smoker. If person number two says, nah, I don't do that anymore, I'm not a smoker, they've already told themselves mentally to say, I don't identify with that anymore. Are you with me? So same thing, when you want to work out more, it's, I'm working at it. I'm getting there. You haven't accepted that identity yet. So you're not holding yourself to that standard to say, this is what I do. This is who I am. And I think a really hard part that challenges a lot of players like yourself to be able to make that jump is you say, but that wasn't me. That's fine. Start tomorrow. Tomorrow is a new you, and be able to move on from that. A lot of people can't just start from scratch. They get too bogged down with, I'm not ready yet. I won't do that yet. I'll start January 1 and I'll waste these last 47 days of 2024. I'll waste these last 47 and then I'll start anew. And then you keep kicking that can down the road, right? So understand that these identity-based habits, they're big time. They're big time in order for you to move forward in the direction that you want to go, right? Because we all identify ourselves with certain situations, and we repeat the story over and over that we tell ourselves. How can you rewrite your story today? How can you rewrite your story for, not rewrite it, but start a new chapter in 2025 to say, this is me, and this is the new me, and this is the fun me, and I'm excited to get to see what that next chapter looks like. Are you with me? These identity-based habits play such a significant role in order for your confidence to grow. Here's a thought. If your beliefs and your worldviews play such an important role, where do they come from in the first place? I think we would agree that they do play an important role for you, but I think what an interesting thought, where do they even come from? Well, let's get to maybe one of those answers, and it's you repeating certain things over and over and over. So understand that the more you repeat a behavior, the more you identify with that behavior. You have that proof to yourself to say, yeah, I've done that over and over, and that's just who I am. Let's take for those of us in Colorado, is it easy for you to wake up on a snowy day to go out for that run that you know you need to put in, or you want to put in, or that you should put in? If you do, and you identify with that, it's just a habit. It's like, no, it's not a big deal. And if you don't identify as that type of a person, you're going to say, that's cold, and I don't like the snow. I'm not working out today. Are you with me? Right? The more you repeat a behavior, the more you identify with it. And it goes back to those identity habits, right? Here's what it comes down to. If you believe in something, you're going to find a way to do it. If that goal is worth it to you, you're going to find a way to do it and a reason to do it, right? And if it doesn't mean that much to you, you're going to find an excuse. It's like, I don't want it that bad. I don't want it that bad right now, right? And those are the repeated behaviors. And this is the story we keep telling ourselves based on the decisions we choose to make. Let me ask you this one when it comes to goals and pursuing goals, and not even ask you as much as remind you, you cannot outperform your self-image. What you see in that mirror, you're never going to outperform it. So if you tell yourself, I can't do it. You know what? You're right. And when you look in that mirror and you tell yourself, I got this. I'm going to go get the next one. I didn't have the last one, but I got the next one. You know what? You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So be mindful of the story you tell yourself, because you will never outperform your self-image and what you think of yourself. That is such an important, I don't think I told you something you don't already know, but such an important reminder, especially in those down times when you start doubting yourself and you start questioning yourself and you're just like, I don't know if I can. Look in that mirror and tell yourself, I can. Because whatever you choose to tell yourself, you are right. You are right. So be mindful as you continue to push forward with whatever goal or goals you may have. That becomes an important piece, is what you think of yourself. You're never going to outperform that self-image. The power of focus. Here's a big one, because time becomes such an important piece. I said, if it matters, you have to measure it. What time frame are you giving yourself? Here's the reality. Every single one of us on this planet has 24 hours to work with. You elongate that into a week, that's 168 hours. Everybody has the same amount of time to accomplish stuff. Or, on the reverse side, not accomplish stuff. You had 168 hours to do it. How are you divvying up your sleep with how you're getting healthy and maybe recovering and that aspect of it? How much time might you need to allocate for school, for friends? But how about these other pieces? How are you filling in those spaces with that time frame, knowing we all have it, right? We all have the same amount of time. So let's talk about focus here for a second. If you have diluted focus, you're going to get diluted results. And if you don't know what diluted means, it essentially means this: if it's mixed up, if it's a little bit here and a little bit there, my focus is in this place and that place, your results are going to reflect that. And I think that's, again, just a reminder. I'm probably not telling you something you don't already know, but it's an important reminder as we chase after, hey, let's use the example in the beginning. If you have 3 goals set for yourself, it's going to be hard to focus on which one matters most. Which one can I tackle first, maybe the quickest? And that's going to help me get into that second one and lean into that much better, right? If you have diluted focus, you will get diluted results. Understand that one from a goal setting standpoint. Anybody ever feel like you're a great multitasker? If you think you're a good multitasker, I would challenge that idea and say, all you're good at is really good at getting distracted. You're good at not focusing. You're good at not being intentional. I think those of us that feel like, oh, but I can do this and then I can accomplish that, it's going to take you a lot longer because you allow yourself to get interrupted. It goes back to that having one goal and being super focused and intentional with it, or having 3 or 5 plus goals, and now you're balancing all kinds of things and you're really not accomplishing anything, but you got a lot going on. You're busy, you're working hard, but you haven't had much to show for it from a result standpoint. I think a space you need to be very careful with when it comes to trying to balance too much and thinking you're going to accomplish it all. Okay? I think too many people believe they can balance 3, 4, 5, 6 things, and they get overwhelmed and they feel like they don't know where to start because they're in the mess. So just be mindful of that as you navigate those situations as they present themselves. Specifically, bring that back to your goal setting and you going after those things. Hey, wanted to ask you guys a question. You remember the kid who became popular and rich from playing soccer, working the nighttime shift, doing day trading, and being an online influencer? Yeah, me neither. Continue to focus. Again, you are not great. None of us are great at multitasking. This kid never existed. But my point is, a lot of us get distracted by a lot of things, thinking that we're going to accomplish things in the meantime. It's not going to happen. Focus. Have that power of patience. Have that ability to focus and key in on things. You're going to find success for what it is that you look to pursue. Here's a second thought. You don't become great at anything by doing 100 things at once. Just wanted to hit that one home if I didn't hit it enough when it comes to balancing multiple things at once. Let me ask you this. We were just talking about goal setting, right? And the odds of you accomplishing that goal if you just had 1 goal versus 2 goals versus 3 goals. Have you ever heard of a coach to say, don't set goals? don't set goals, they're not needed. Well, I'm going to go down this path because there are a few individuals that I admire very much that are now former coaches, but coached at the highest level. Going to give you a couple names. I don't expect you to know them, but Don Meyer was his name, all-time winningest basketball coach in Division I history. He said this: "I'm not big on goals and setting goals with my team. We were just after having as good a practice as we could that day." That was his main thing. Can we focus on that day and that day alone? Not worried about a national championship, not worrying about conference championship, not worried about any accolades. Just can we pull out the max from this one day, right? Brad Stevens, he's now the general manager of the Boston Celtics, who just won the NBA championship this last year. When he coached that team, he said, "You know what? I'm not a big fan of goals and talking with him about my team anymore. I've kind of gone away from them." I thought, how interesting. And I think how confusing, because again, we just spent the first 20-ish minutes of this conversation talking about goal setting. So let's talk about the other side of it to say, why on earth wouldn't you set goals? And what are you focusing on in place of that? So think about, what do you focus on when it comes to goals? You usually focus on the result, right? The result, the end of it. Hey, by the end of the season, I want to be better with my left foot. Hey, by the end of the season, I want to have scored 20 goals. Hey, by the end of the season, fill in the blank, right? You're so often focusing on the end result. So if you understand that, can we also agree that there are things that are going to come in your way, right? Maybe you're a very good player on your respective team. What if the other team tries to take you out based on their formation? Whether it's them double teaming you a lot, whether it's them playing with more defenders and you're a forward, right? That might affect your ability to have the outcome that you want when it comes to setting that goal. Are you with me? It might be an injury situation, right? Unfortunately, we all have to deal with that dynamic. Not all of us, but some of us deal with that dynamic from time to time. And so there's things beyond your control that aren't going to always allow that end result to happen. Are you with me? Maybe we shift it to this. A goal, it's the result to which effort is aimed. So let's focus on that ending of it. It's that effort to which is aimed at the goal. That now becomes within your control. Are you with me? You're not so much focused and tied into the result, right? But you're more focused on the effort that's aimed toward that goal. That's such an important distinction, and it's such a healthier perspective to have when it comes to this goal setting and you being able to stay true and stay consistent within the process that you want when it comes to ultimately trying to get the result that you want. But you're focusing not on the result, but the effort, because that's fully within your control. Today, that's fully within your control, right? So be consistent in that space, and now you're going to get places. Understand that end result that you want, it's driven by, I alluded to it, it's the process. But that process is driven by your character. So understand this sequence of events and understand where things get created from. And it's first and foremost those identity habits that we alluded to in the beginning. So whether you want to set goals or not set goals, understand that your character, those things that make you who you are, that is ultimately going to set your process in place to be able to pursue that end result that you want to get, right? And you start mixing and matching these, your results are going to be all over the place. So if you're telling yourself right now, poof, I'm not the hardest worker that's putting in extra work, you can change that, right? And that becomes a new identity for you. And now that character piece is going to drive your process, right? So understand that process can then move forward and push forward the way you want it to. Can you be committed to the process of what you do without being emotionally attached to the result of what you do? Just a rhetorical question, but something I think you need to be thinking about when it comes to this goal setting process, especially going into a new year. Can you be committed to the process of what you do without being emotionally attached to the result, right? Because that deters so many people, especially in the beginning. If they're not getting the results that they want, they quit, they stop, they find something else, something shinier, something brighter, right? I think that's where the character piece comes in, right? Because we're all going to get those results that we don't like, right? Whether, again, might be an injury that stopped you. You were flying, and that injury comes in and it just stops you in your place. Can you now pick up as close to where you left off as possible and move forward from there? Might you need to recalibrate a little bit and redefine what those goals need to be to say, you know what, I didn't get the result. Now, what might I need to change in my process to get the result I want moving forward from here, right? So, such an important distinction and something for you to think through and think about as you think about your goal setting and what matters to you. I'm sharing a personal experience, and I wanted to share these tidbits with you because maybe you can relate a little bit. I loved goals in phase one because in my eyes, on the other side of the goal was success. And when you reach your goals, how does it make you feel? You feel the excitement, but that feeling doesn't last long, does it? So what do? You set another goal and you start learning to chase that feeling of accomplishment. But here's what starts to happen. When you become better at your sport, things change, don't they? Let's say you score 3 goals in a game. What do peers now expect the next game? They expect 3 more goals, or at least numerous goals, right? And that's where we enter the second phase. I hated goals. I don't know about you, but I hated goals once these expectations started coming from other places. My goals started to become determined by other people's expectations. Other people were setting my goals for me indirectly, right? And I hated that. It caused a high level of anxiety because I knew that I wasn't fully in control of the result anymore, right? You had a better understanding of like, I don't play that same opponent every weekend. My coach, he might not play me the same amount of time. Maybe he likes to play me in different positions. That's going to have an effect on my output, right? And in this phase, I was worried about things outside of my control and whether or not I could please everybody around me, right? I went through these phases as a player. And then I got to this phase. As I got into my college years, now it's like, wow, all that pressure for what? Right? I started to understand goals. It was never the goals that I had an issue with, really. It was the relationship that I had with the pressure that comes with the goals. How did I look at pressure? I looked at it as a threat. If I didn't hit the goal, what am I? I'm a failure. My identity and my self-worth, they were attached to whether or not I hit my goals. And once I realized that I needed to change my relationship with pressure, things changed for me. I learned how to convert the pressure that comes with goals from a threat into an opportunity. How did I do that? I began to use the energy pressure creates as an opportunity to grow into a better player. And most importantly, a stronger person. Let me give you a specific example. If I put out a number for myself, I played center midfielder. And through maybe it was an opponent that I had 2 assists the last time we played him. And if I didn't hit that same benchmark, I didn't see it as, well, that was a terrible game. It was, what might I need to change, right? And I asked myself 2 questions. What did I do well and why? What can I improve and how? And just by using those 2 simple questions and reflect on my performance, it now puts things in perspective, and it shifted my focus from saying my outcome wasn't what I wanted, but it wasn't a terrible game necessarily. Are you with me? So something to be mindful of to help you based on where you're at in your situation, in your journey. How can you understand goals and not fall victim to other people's goals, right? And how can you get this to work for you? So when you set an external goal, it creates something, doesn't it? What does it create? It creates a chase. And when you have something to chase, it creates one of 3 things, or maybe it's a mixture of these things. It creates pressure because, and make sure you view it as a friend. It narrows your focus, doesn't it? And it will accelerate your growth. Those are the things that an external goal can and probably will do for you, especially if you're looking at it through that lens. The why behind your chase, though, that's the most important thing. Why are you chasing becoming the best player on your team? Why are you chasing improving your weaker foot? Why are you chasing become a better fill in the blank? If you chase things externally to help you grow internally, then it becomes a productive challenge. I believe that who we become as a result of the chase is the most important thing of it, right? So as you believe or don't believe in goal setting, right? Ultimately, it's the why behind it. Because the real goal, it's for personal growth to help others, right? I believe I said at one point in one of our prior sessions, you are uniquely equipped, you are uniquely qualified to best serve the person you once were. When you've overcome that adversity, when you've overcome and you've seen that growth, you're now best and most uniquely qualified to help that person chasing that similar situation, right? So how can you maybe take this perspective to help you grow, to help you develop, and now you bring somebody else with you, right? Maybe a year or two from now, you've got the time under your belt and you've got that experience to say, how can I now help somebody understand goals a little bit better and the processes behind them? Make sure, I gave you two visuals obviously here, but make sure you own your development. I think a lot of players fall victim to this mindset. And maybe you're here with me at one point, and it is, well, my coach limits my play time, so I don't have as big of an opportunity to have an impact on the game. I would say, no, he doesn't. He doesn't control your play time. You do that for him. You do that for him by the time that you invest or choose not to invest outside of training. You do that for them already. I think a lot of players say, yeah, but get rid of the yeah, but. How can you own your development? And whether it's putting in the extra time, maybe it's putting in the extra thought processes behind the sports psych. Maybe it's re-looking and re-listening to some of these resources that you've had with Colorado Select. Maybe it's finding other resources and additional resources. How can you continually add to who you are and what you do, right? Your job is to make your coach's job as hard as possible. If you made their job easy, well, unless you're getting all the play time, you haven't done your job, right? And now if you are getting all that play time, here's your challenge. Can you sustain that? Can you be consistent in that space? This picture on the right, I'm alluding to a player journal. I think that's a brilliant resource that you can do regardless if you're 10 years old, 16 years old, 18 years old and going into college. Use a player journal to reflect. And if you were paying attention just a couple slides ago, I would suggest you use two questions for your player journal. And it's, what did I do well and why? What can I improve and how? I think those are two simple questions that they don't use much judgment. It's not a, wow, I had a great game today. That makes me better, right? Or I had a terrible game. I'm the worst guy on the team, right? Those two questions take that subjectivity out of it. And you have to now reflect on your performance to say, what did I do well? But why did I do that well? Was it because I was getting my head up before I was receiving the ball, so it allowed me to make quicker and better decisions? Or what can I improve and how? I need to make quicker decisions. How do I do that? I need to get my head up before I receive the ball to be able to take those pictures of the field. So now I know where I want to go next. Or might I need to talk a little bit sooner to make things a little bit more effective? No matter how you spin it, you're elaborating a little bit after things have played themselves out versus simply judging your performance as good or bad. So player journals, I've seen them work for a lot of players at a lot of different ages. I would suggest as you continue to pursue your goals for whatever they are, how can you use a journal to help you in that reflection moment? Because that's where the growth happens. How can you take yourself out of those emotional situations that we all get in, whether it be in the training environment or game environment? Take that away. And now let's think through, what did we do well and what can we improve? Curious what you see on this one. Don't need to use the chat for it. Maybe you've seen this picture before, but if you haven't, you should be able to see a younger lady looking away with her feather in her cap. She's looking away from you. Or maybe you see the old lady, and the old lady that's her nose with her mouth at the bottom, and that's her chin in the coat. If you can see the old lady. Why I gave you this visual, I think it's a very interesting one. It gives you perspective, doesn't it? And I gave you perspectives tonight when it comes to the goal setting. I gave you a perspective of, are you a fan of setting goals? Or are you a fan of, I don't like setting goals because I've already heard about, hey, focus on the process, focus on your system. There's no right or wrong, right? If you see the young lady in this picture, you're absolutely right. If you see the old lady in this picture, guess what you are? Absolutely right. So regardless of how you perceive goals, whether they're useful or not useful, I would say you're right. And I just want to make sure you have clarity on you and how you want to move forward best. Hopefully I've planted some ideas as to how you can better do that moving forward. I wanted to pose these last few questions for you. Who's accountable for getting this done? When you set those goals or set those systems in place, who's accountable? Meaning who's responsible for getting them done? What's the one behavior you can add? I put an asterisk with 5 to say, what are 5 behaviors you can add by the end of the year? That's where they become very personal real quick to say, I would choose something far different for my brother or for my sister. I don't know about you if you have siblings, but I'm sure that's the same case. And that's going to be the same case with your teammates, right? What's one behavior that you need to add? What new skills do I need to add to reach these goals? What skills might you not be confident in right now and today as of what? November 14th to say, not there yet. right? So what's one new skill that you can add before this year is over? And then give yourself in quarter one. So by March 30th, what's one new skill that you can put in your toolkit to say, I'm freaking good at that now. And last March 2024, I was not there. But this March 2025, I'm there, right? And now you compound a new skill by the end of the year. You get 4 new ones by the end of next year. Now that's 5 new skills that you say, you're not just okay, you're good, because you got super focused to become very good in those new skill sets. How will you measure your results? That's such an important piece of it. If it matters, you have to measure it. Performance improves when performance is measured, period. Are you going to measure it over a month? Is it over a quarter? Quarter meaning over a 3-month span? Are you going to measure it over a full season? You have to give yourself that end timeline to say, by this time frame, I want to be here. And now it alludes you to your last question. How often will you revisit that progress? So if you have a season-long goal, are you going to check in with yourself in month 1 to say, okay, I'm 4 weeks in, where am I at? I'm way behind. I need to reevaluate that end goal. Or, wow, I'm farther along than I thought. I can accomplish this, not before the end of the season, but like by next week, right? And then what's going to be my next goal after that? Or what's going to be my next focal point after that? What's going to be my next behavior that I now implement? And how often are you revisiting these things? Such important questions for you as you navigate your personal and specific journey when it comes to these goals and moving forward as a player. Look, you don't have to be different to be successful. You just have to be what most aren't, and that's consistent. I think too many players think I have to do something magical and special, and no, you don't. I said it a couple sessions ago. The number one habit you should be absolutely obsessed with mastering is the habit of showing up. Be consistent day in and day out. Plug away at it. Maybe you give yourself a day off here and there. Fair play. Fair play. But be consistent with it. Don't ignore it for a couple weeks and expect yourself to pick up where you left off. It doesn't work like that with anything. So just be mindful and be consistent. If you truly want to be different and you want to be an outlier, keep showing up. Have that consistency piece. Don't do this. Don't judge yourself too early in the process. For those of you that might not be able to see that crystal clear, right? That's a diamond. Where do diamonds come from? They come from the earth, and they don't start off as diamonds, do they? And they don't turn into diamonds in a month, do they? It's that consistency. It's that art of showing up every single day, and that pressure helping it mold you, helping you get better. It's not keeping you from anything, that pressure. It's seeing how bad you want something. It's how are you framing that pressure? Is it a deterrent? Is it holding you back? Or is it something to say, how bad do you want this right now? And are you going to push through it? Because if you're not willing to push through it, you don't deserve what's on the other side of it. And if you're willing to push through it, hey, now we're on to the next thing. But don't judge yourself too early. Give yourself time. Be patient. Challenge yourself to be the best for the next 47 days. That's my challenge to you. Be the best version for you for the next 47 days. No excuses, just action and growth. Because that's how many days you have left of 2024. Don't wait for that big goal come 2025 and waste these 47. Don't do that, because you're going to put yourself a lot farther ahead if you choose not to. That is a promise. I'm going to leave you with this, and it's what I always leave you with. It's just a 4-question survey. I changed one of the questions slightly simply because this is our last session. I hope you have some decent takeaways from these 4 sports psych sessions. I hope you've enjoyed them, and I would just love the feedback. So if you would just take the time, again, it's 4 questions. I appreciate you guys showing up, because this tells me you're being selfish for you and for you from a mental standpoint. And I think that's a very healthy place and space to operate, because you're focusing on you. And there's absolutely these times that you need to do. I will not see you guys before Thanksgiving and the holidays. So have a safe holiday season. Have a great holiday season. Wishing you guys all the best and success on the field.